Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your hosts, Brad Wilson and Jon Chai.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, these are your hosts of Tactical Tuesday, Coach Brad and Jon. Jon, how you doing, sir?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I can't complain. What do you have baked up for us this week on Tactical Tuesday?
We have a topic that I don't even think needs to be filled on the website, but brand new topic. We're gonna be going over a couple hands where I decided to flat the button pre-flop. That's a pretty rare action for me, just flatting from anywhere that's not the big blind. But I think if I was gonna start throwing in more flats pre, I'd probably start on the button. And so yeah, just brought in two hands to see what you think about my button flats, and mostly like kind of just to go over the logic behind when you shouldn't be flatting in position.
Sure, makes sense. All right, so let's start out by looking at all the actions. Looks like a fish opens to 2.5 bigs from under the gun. They start with about 61 big blinds, and you opt to flat instead of 3-betting the fish on the button with Jack 10 of hearts. You have like 110 bigs and have both blinds covered. So here's the place to start. What was your thought process behind flatting the button versus the UTG open?
So I think there are two things that I was thinking about that led me to flat here. The first one is it's probably harder to notice, but the big blind is also not really a fish, but definitely a weaker player. They're starting with 94 big blinds instead of 100. I think that might be a small indicator, but also we can't see the HUD stats now, but they were definitely on the more on the 18, 10, 3% 3-bet side.
Sure.
So I think flatting here allows me to play more pots with the big blind. I think the secondary thing I was thinking about was that one of the things that I want to avoid with a hand that plays really well post-flop, like Jack 10 of hearts, is getting 4-bet by the fish and being forced to fold. I think one of the things that I assume you'll 100% agree on is that fish just make way bigger mistakes post-flop just in terms of big blinds than they do pre. So just getting to those nodes where we kind of just allow them to make really big mistakes on the river or on later streets where the pot is bigger is I think is another benefit of flatting here. It's just making sure you don't get forced to fold.
They tend to make bigger mistakes because the pots are much bigger by the river. I think they do make quite significant mistakes pre-flop. But I would say a couple of data points that should be factored in here are, the small blind squeeze percentage or the aggressiveness of the blinds. I don't think it's actually the end of the world to get 3-bet with your hand.
4-bet? Oh, by the blinds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting 3-bet by the blinds. I also think that villains have less incentive to open the action against an under the gun raise by a fish, just because they tend to call 3-bets quite often. They can 4-bet jam, and once they 3-bet and the fish 4-bets, they're probably forced to just call it off, get it in with 60 bigs against the under the gun player. So I think due to lack of incentive for the blinds to 3-bet super wide, and then also letting the big blind join the party, I think your logic, it adds up. I would say that this player type probably not going to be 4-betting a ton from under the gun anyway. If you did 3-bet with their stack size, I think that there could be an adjustment made as far as your 3-bet sizing. I think you could actually go smaller than normal.
Yeah.
Instead of a full 3x, you could 2.5.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah, we still threaten stacks with a smaller 3-bet because he's starting shorter.
Right. We still threaten stacks. They're going to call either way. There is the potential downside of opening the action by 3-betting. So keeping the action closed by flatting, I think can't go wrong.
Yeah. Okay. And just to like clarify, like the types of mistakes that I like, it's that I was like referencing when I said like fish make big mistakes post flop is like it's not hard to like 4-bet ace king. Like it's like it's I don't know, it's pretty easy, I guess, to play well pre-flop, but then they can just make massive mistakes where like they just stack off with, aces on 7, 8, 9 monotone or something like that, or I don't know, just put like way too much money in post-flop on boards where, overpairs look like really strong hands or top pair looks like a really strong hand, but it's actually not a hand that you should be excited about stacking off with.
As somebody who's like really deep in another pre-flop project right now, I would say that you would think that it wouldn't be super difficult to make significant mistakes pre-flop, but it is not super difficult.
Okay.
Even amongst like the wolves, we see a lot of pre-flop mistakes in aggregate after 50 or 100K hands. So like, yeah, pre-flop is just trickier than I think most people expect. But anyway, that's just a tangent for a different day.
Yep.
For here, yeah, just flatting. The blinds fold, so heads up flop. You're in position as a pre-flop caller in this 2-bet pot. There's 65 in the middle. Flop is 9 of hearts, 6 of clubs, deuce of diamonds. So you're like 60% of the way to a straight flush. Congratulations. Villain starts out with a half pot bet. And I just can't imagine you doing anything other than calling here.
Yeah. Just going to be calling, probably just happily calling anything that's like half pot or smaller.
Yeah.
I know for us, like this is just a super standard spot to call. I think maybe some of the listeners and like definitely myself like years ago would have, not years ago, but like a year and a half ago maybe.
Let's not give yourself too much credit here. I was going to say like a year ago.
Yeah. Like I was just like way over folding to flop c-bet, I think. And like these were the sorts of hands, I think in position, maybe this one, it's easier to like see the call. But I just like was not calling with like 2 overs often enough, getting like a good price. I think one of the things that like really opened my eyes to that was like seeing your fold to flop c-bet percentage. And it was like, I don't know. In my mind, it was like something obscene at the time. It was like 14% or something. I was like, what? Like, how can you only fold the flop like 14, 15% of the time and like be winning? But what I realized was like I just had to massively recalibrate like how I should be dealing with flop c-bets.
Yeah, I mean, basically like having just 6 overcards is like, close to 25% equity, and you need 25% equity to continue facing a half pot c-bet. So like the situation just kind of, makes a lot of sense. And then once you do realize equity, then, you can do other things. You can bluff. You have bluff potential. You can value bet. Like lots of good things can happen. So here, yeah,
good things happen.
Good things happen. You turn a 5 of hearts, so you have a flush draw. Which this is the Jon special. Now, somehow all the money's going to go. I don't know exactly how.
He jams and I call.
Yeah, they have 554. There's 125 in the pot. 5x rip. They bet half pot again. Surprise, surprise.
Reliable fish.
Yeah, reliable bet sizing. I think that there's a number of ways you could go here. I wouldn't actually mind like a small raise on the turn and then a river jam, like a click.
Yeah.
I think that raising the river could get a little dicey if you call and they bet half pot on the river. They're going to be betting like 120. So, you definitely want to be able to put the last bet in. Raising the turn, again, reopens the action. Although, I don't think that they have a high concentration of really strong hands that just want to rip after betting half pot. I know they have some, but probably not a ton. So I wouldn't be super worried about reopening the action here on the turn.
Right. Like if they have 7-8, they're just betting close to pot here more likely than
they tend to just size up, right?
Yeah.
Like with the strength of their hand. So, even with aces, I would expect them to bet bigger either on the flop or on the turn. So, yeah, I mean, whether you raise small here or call, I think it's kind of your choice. My preference is probably just to raise the turn and jam the river, though.
Interesting. Yeah, I did not raise the turn. I think I was probably overly concerned with reopening the action and getting jammed on and, having to call it off with the flush. I'm just kidding. Having to fold a flush draw on the turn. So yeah, I think like I probably could have done a better job of like reading into the bet sizings like you just did and just been like, yeah, I'm probably never getting or like very, very rarely getting bet 3-bet here. So I should just raise, like get 2 opportunities to realize fold equity. And yeah, just jam the river. But I was too scared of getting bet 3-bet on the turn.
Yeah, which is really, that's the variable that needs to be considered is like how often, if I open the action here, does the villain bet 3-bet? Do I have any data points suggesting that they're less likely to or more likely to leading up to this point?
Right.
So you opt for the call and you get a 4-liner on the river. Deuce, tray, 5, 6, 9 is your final board. All the flush draw missed. John has Jack 10 of hearts, which is a big pile of nothing. Villain has 500 behind. There's 245 in the pot. Mercifully, the villain checked. If the villain bet, you're just done, right? Like
I think it depends on size again, though. Like my plan on the turn was to call turn and very likely just jam river over a bet or bet river versus check. So I think like again, half pot or less, I probably would have just jammed the river.
All right. Well, at least you're going to take the one opportunity to
go
ahead and realize fold equity. Yeah. They checked. You stick it in. 2x facing their check. I would imagine this is going to be a very profitable bet, especially once villain checks on the 4-liner. They probably don't have a ton of straights, and given their flop and turn sizings, probably don't have a ton of like sets or 2 pair. So, yeah.
Any thoughts about sizing on the river? Like, so you know how you said like, oh, this is going to be like a very profitable bet. I agree. Like, I think this spot is just so profitable to bluff that I was like, man, do I even need to jam here?
I would say that whatever bet size you pick is likely to make money.
Yeah.
It just depends on like which one makes the most. I'm not sure. If you bet pot, that needs to work more than 50% of the time. If you jam, that needs to work more than 66%. Now, it does jamming fold out additional hands that might call versus pot. So if they have a hand like top pair, ace 9, will they call a pot size bet at any different frequency than 2x? Like, I'm actually not sure. But, better safe than sorry.
Yeah. That was me too. I wasn't even like, I was thinking like, yeah, maybe 9x does fold. That's a good point. Like, it's a tough spot to just call it off with 9x on this 4-liner. But yeah, I was like thinking like if I went smaller sizes, like, oh man, I might just get picked off by like 7s or 8s even. Just fish, just click and call randomly on the river.
Yeah, like that's how poker works, right? Like you size up and try to fold out more hands as you scale up with, risking more money.
Yep.
Let's see what they did fold here though. Boom, you crushed them.
You were right about the sizings on the flop and the turn though, about just this not being a hand that would be happy to put all the money in or bet 3-bet the turn just based on their sizing.
Yeah. Yep. And there we have it. You folded out the ace king high. Thank God they didn't like 3/4 the river or something. You'd have been that would have not been good for us.
Yeah. I think I didn't 3-bet pre.
Yeah, great thing you did in 3-bet pre. Well, maybe. Who knows? Like, it's not a given that fish always 4-bet ace king. So
That's true.
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
All right, so that hand actually took a lot longer than I thought it would.
Me too.
We're at the 14-minute mark. Stick around after the break. John is going to play a much bigger pot after flatting on the button. So we'll see you in a couple minutes.
Are you a lone wolf searching for the ultimate pack? The CPG Wolf program is a close-knit brotherhood hell-bent on one thing only: chasing poker greatness. Powered by bleeding edge wolf strats and led by Coach Brad and his lieutenants, CPG Wolves are systematically prepared for almost any spot they'll encounter on the green felt. If you want to plug into an elite team and have a step-by-step game plan to realize your full poker potential, you can apply at cpgwolves.com. Space is limited, and the pack is only as strong as its weakest member. So only the hungriest, grittiest, and most driven will be accepted into the program. Applications are open at cpgwolves.com.
All right. Welcome back from the break here on Tactical Tuesday, where Jon does some button flatting. Jon, you want to dive directly into this second hand?
Yeah, I'm gonna just play the action until it gets to me, and then I can talk about why I flatted. So the cutoff here is pretty big fish. Well, I guess we can already tell. It's hard to tell from his stack size because he starts with over 100 big blinds, but under the gun opens to $23 and he flats the cutoff. That's already starting to become an indicator that he's probably not a super strong player. I follow along in like the same fashion that makes me seem like not a super strong player and just flat behind with the ace-5 of hearts. I think this would probably be just most of the time would be a 3-bet facing like a normal, open configuration pre-flop. I think what I was thinking in this spot is that if I 3-bet, what's going to happen a lot of the time is that I'm either going to get 4-bet or called by under the gun. And a decent amount of the time, the fish and the cutoff is going to fold. And so basically I'm isolating like a super strong range, basically like an under the gun reg RFI range. Sometimes I'm going to get 4-bet and be forced to fold. And basically like I'm just doing whatever I can to make sure that I get to play a pot in position versus the fish and the cutoff.
Yeah, I'm down. Like, I think it's good. Also, the under the gun player just is out of position for every street post flop, which is nice. And by 3-betting and reopening the action, we give them an opportunity to kind of, neutralize their natural positional disadvantage post flop. So, yeah, flatting, letting Mr. Fish into the party, always a fun plan in my book. So the blinds fold. Now we take a flop 3 ways. There's 84 in the pot. The flop is tray for 7 with 2 diamonds. So you've got a sneaky little double gut shot here with your ace-5 of hearts. There's no heart on the flop. And 84 in the pot. Jon's covered by both players, but everybody's got around 100 bigs. They check to you, and you decide to start out by betting a quarter.
Yep. I think the reg who opened under the gun, check the flop. I expect them to be checking range, especially on 7-4-3, two-tone facing 2 callers. So wouldn't be shocked to get check raised by under the gun. Maybe under the gun doesn't even check raise that much though on 7-4-3, given that one or either of the players behind him could have straights. His overpairs are could just be like drawing dead on this board. So maybe he just plays his overpair slightly more passively. And maybe I shouldn't be expecting check raises as frequently, but in any case, I didn't really care because I have a double gutter. So check raise me, dude.
Yeah, with an overcard too.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
Yeah.
I think you're right though. I don't think you get check raised a ton on this board. You've got sets, you've got straights, and like aces just probably doesn't feel great check raising. And also, yeah, they don't really know what the fish is going to do either. So under the gun decides to call, and the cutoff decides to call. So we take our family pot onto the turn. That is a 6 of hearts, which, as Larry David would say, is a pretty good turn card. There's 163 in the pot. The board is tray 4, 6, 7. So here, UTG checks again, which is like the least unexpected thing on the planet. I can't imagine them doing anything other than checking. And now on the 4-liner, you decide to bet pots.
Yes.
Tell me about this pot-sized bet.
So, I think on the turn, my betting range is going to be extremely polar. I'm probably not betting anything for value that's not a straight. I think I would just check back sets multi-way once the four liner gets her on the turn. So basically, what I'm saying on the turn is that I have straights and some other bluffs. Diamonds are super obvious. You know, maybe I just start stabbing the flop with a hand like 8-9, and continue barreling on the turn. But basically, my range is extremely polar on the turn, and that's what this size is about. I think I could have gone bigger, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you're setting up like a 2x jam versus the
Anybody?
cutoff.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could, but I don't really mind like going pot then overbetting river, which is, I assume, your plan here.
Any other sizes you think I should be considering on the turn?
I mean, 1.5.
Yeah. Okay. So no smaller size, basically.
I can't imagine a smaller size like outperforming a big size with the cutoff in the mix.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, we just want to target them. The river is a 10 of clubs, so final board is tray 4, 6, 7, 10. There's no flush possible. 8, 9 makes a straight, but feels pretty unlikely. Our villain in the cutoff has 866 behind. The pot is 481. They check. You've got about 800. I'm assuming, as I mentioned on the turn, that you got one size here, which is all the marbles. So you wager 791 marbles on the river. Villain matches your wager. Did they tank? Did they snap?
No, he called so fast that I thought we were just chopping. I was like, oh man.
Man, not worried about like the 8-9 at all. Just this guy. This is how you know how you know you live the pure life. You're like, well, at worst, I'm chopping. All right. That's a pretty good river. That's a pretty good river. They called with top set, so they rivered a set of 10s. They did not 3-bet pre with their 10s, and going back to hand number 1 about pre-flop mistakes, this is a pre-flop mistake, flatting in the cutoff with the 10s versus UTG open, and led to a pretty catastrophic outcome, I would imagine, for the cutoff here. If they 3-bet, then they play heads up pot versus UTG, but instead you snuck in the mix and kind of wrecked them.
Yeah. I thought, I don't know if you want to go back a couple clicks and just see what UTG folded. I thought, this is like definitely a tangent, but how UTG played the hand I thought was also fairly interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he just folded the nut flush draw on the turn?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. As I've mentioned to you privately before, and you can never fully wrap your head around it, people actually do fold flush draws on the turn to big bets.
Yeah. That was... He didn't even check raise the flop. What do you think about not check raising the flop with his hand?
I think that they have a range, and their range just doesn't want to check raise the flop, so they check called. And playing everything as a check call, I mean, it can't be...
Yeah. Kind of sucks to get jammed on with his
bad.
hand, which is bizarre to say. If you check raise ace deuce on the flop, and let's say I just...
He just has a range on a board multi-way that doesn't want to have any check raises, so like calling is just the best path.
Oh.
I'm actually down with the way they played the entire hand. I think they played it well.
Yeah. Tough to do anything versus pot on the turn on the 4-liner, I guess, especially when you're out of position.
Yeah, I mean, you have like your straight draw is pretty crappy draw at this point.
Right.
You make a straight and you have a board straight, so not the greatest of draws there on the turn. Plus, it's like it's not exactly hard to see when the flush completes that like a 5's probably just not going to be betting the river.
Yeah, so your implieds are really low.
Yeah, you have low implied odds. So, well played hand, sir. Flatting the button worked out quite well in both situations, and I think your logic was pretty much on point. So, well done. We have 2 W's in the column for Jon in this week's episode of Tactical Tuesday. And I think that's all I have for this episode.
Nice. Good episode. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter, join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast.